Put that blue powder down. Whatever miracle fertilizer you've got sitting on the shelf for your bell peppers, it isn't feeding your plant. It's starving the ground underneath it. Look at this one. Pale leaves, a stem thin enough to snap with 2 fingers, every luxury feed on the market poured onto it, and still nothing. Now look at its twin. Same seed packet, same day, same water, and it's twice the size, dark green, already loaded with fruit. The difference isn't luck. It's a trick my family's used for generations, and it costs less than $1. 10 days from now, your plant could look exactly like this one, using 4 things already sitting in your kitchen. Keep watching, because what you're doing right now might be exactly what's holding your harvest back. Here's the lie we've all bought into. Gardening has to be expensive to work. That fast-acting powder floods your soil with salts, and your plant reacts the way any of us would after a shot of pure sugar. It shoots up fast, stays green for a week, then never builds real strength. Come the first heat wave, that plant folds, because the powder skipped the soil entirely and fed the plant directly, bypassing billions of microbes built to do this job for free. Today we're firing the fertilizer aisle and putting those microbes back to work. Feed the soil, and the soil feeds the plant. The one thing the garden center will never tell you. Subscribe to SPROUTCYCLE Garden before we mix the tonic. Next week's compost trick never stinks, and you won't want to miss it. Walk into any forest, and you won't find a single bag of fertilizer buried at the base of the trees, yet they tower over everything around them because that soil has never stopped being alive. My grandfather never bought a bag of plant food in 60 years of growing, and his tomatoes were the ones neighbors asked about. He understood something we've forgotten. Dirt isn't just a place to anchor roots. It's a digestive system, breaking down what the plant can't use on its own. Pour chemicals onto that system long enough, and you put it on life support. What we're building today is a reset button for that biology. 10 days from now, the change won't just show up in the leaves, it'll show up in soil that's finally breathing again. Here's the recipe, and it's shorter than you'd expect. 1 tablespoon of plain baking yeast, the living spark that wakes everything else up. 2 tablespoons of molasses, not sugar, because molasses carries the iron and potash your peppers need once they start fruiting. 1 cup of buttermilk, your insurance against blossom end rot, and exactly 1 teaspoon of baking soda, standing guard against mold. 4 ingredients, all sitting in your kitchen right now. But there's a 5th piece that will ruin this entire batch if you get it wrong, and it's the one thing almost nobody thinks to check: your water. Filling that jug straight from the tap? That's exactly what's sabotaging your garden before you even start. City water is treated with chlorine on purpose. That's what makes it safe to drink. It also makes it a death sentence for the yeast we're about to wake up. Chlorine doesn't discriminate between harmful bacteria and the beneficial kind we're trying to grow. It kills both. So skip the tap entirely and use 1 gallon of lukewarm rainwater instead. No rain barrel handy? Fill a jug and let it sit uncovered for 24 hours. The chlorine will evaporate out on its own, and you'll be left with water your yeast can actually survive in. Patience wins this whole process. Rushing it is the single biggest reason this tonic fails before it ever gets a fair shot. Start by dissolving the molasses fully into your gallon of lukewarm rainwater. Once that's mixed in, sprinkle the tablespoon of yeast across the surface of the water. Here's the part that trips people up. Don't stir it in. Leave it alone. Set that container somewhere warm, out of direct sunlight, and step away from it. This is the 10-day window we promised at the start, though the real action usually kicks off within the first 2 or 3 days. Watch for a tan, frothy layer forming across the top. Some gardeners call it the head. That foam is proof of life. It means the yeast has woken up and is actively multiplying, feeding on the sugars in the molasses, and releasing exactly the kind of microbial activity your soil has been starving for. No foam after a day or two usually points to one of 2 problems. The water was too hot when you mixed it and killed the yeast on contact, or there was still chlorine lingering in it. Dump the batch, start fresh with properly rested water, and don't rush the second attempt either. Once that foam is sitting thick and active across the top, it's ready for the final mix. Stir in your full cup of buttermilk, followed by the teaspoon of baking soda, combining gently rather than vigorously. You'll notice a little extra fizz the moment that baking soda hits. That's completely normal. That's the acidity balancing out in real time. This 10-day stretch isn't a random number. It mirrors how long a soil bed that's been dependent on chemicals actually needs to start responding to fresh microbial life. The first few days wake the yeast itself. The days that follow are when that active culture spreads through the soil and starts breaking down organic matter that's been sitting locked up and unusable for who knows how long. By day 7 or 8, most gardens start showing a shift in leaf color. By day 10, the difference is usually impossible to miss. New growth, thicker stems, and a plant that's finally decided to stop merely surviving. Keep a small notebook nearby if you've got one. Jot down the day you mixed the tonic and the day you applied it. That one habit separates the gardener who repeats this successfully every season from the one who tries it once, loses track of the timing, and never sees the same results twice. Preparation matters just as much as the tonic itself. Pouring this onto dry, cracked ground wastes most of it. The soil can't absorb it evenly and it just runs off. Water your bed lightly with plain water first, enough to soften that top layer. Now the technique, because how you apply this matters just as much as what's in it. Pour the tonic in a ring a few inches out from the base of the stem, tracing a full circle around the plant rather than dumping it in one spot. Never pour it directly against the stem, and never let it splash onto the leaves or the main stalk. That ring shape isn't arbitrary. It puts the tonic exactly where the plant's feeder roots are actively searching for nutrients, in that outer band of soil where the root system does most of its work. Pour too close to the stem, and you risk direct contact that can stress tender tissue or invite rot right at the base. Pour too far out, and the tonic never reaches the roots that need it most. A few inches out, all the way around, is the sweet spot every time. Dosage depends entirely on the size and stage of the plant you're working with. Seedlings need only a few drops, just enough to introduce microbial activity without overwhelming a root system that's still finding its footing in the soil. Too much too early can actually shock a young plant before it's had the chance to establish itself. Potted pepper plants, with their more limited soil volume, do well with a quarter cup applied around the base. Established in-ground plants, the ones with a full root network already spread through the bed, can handle a full cup, applied once a week on a consistent schedule. Resist the urge to do more than that. A gardener's pride wrecks this method more often than almost anything else. That instinct that says if a little works this well, a lot must work even better. It doesn't work that way, not with living soil biology. Overdoing it throws off the very microbial balance you spent 10 days carefully building, flooding the soil with more activity than it can actually use and creating an imbalance instead of a boost. It can also shock roots that simply aren't accustomed to that much biological activity happening all at once around them. Once a week in the right amount for your plant's size is enough to keep that soil alive, active, and working steadily in the background without ever overwhelming it. Where you garden changes how quickly you'll see all of this play out. Warmer growing zones tend to show results faster than the full 10 days, since active soil in warmer conditions heats up and responds to new microbial life more quickly than soil that's still cool. Zones 8 through 11 might notice the shift as early as day 6 or 7, with leaves visibly darkening and new growth pushing out ahead of schedule. Cooler zones 5 through 7 should expect closer to the full 10 days before that change becomes obvious, simply because the soil itself takes longer to warm and the microbes take longer to multiply. Either way, patience and consistency matter far more than speed. A gardener who sticks with the weekly rhythm in a cooler zone will still outpace one who gives up early in a warmer one. There's a simple reason you've likely never heard any of this from the big fertilizer brands, and it isn't complicated. There's no profit sitting in a tablespoon of yeast, a spoonful of molasses, and a jug of rainwater. Nobody can put a barcode on what's already sitting in your pantry. Nobody can build a subscription model around something that costs less than $1 and lasts for weeks at a time. So instead, what gets sold to us is convenience. A blue powder that dissolves fast, delivers a quick flush of green, and vanishes from the soil almost as quickly as it arrived, leaving you right back at the store next month. That's the trap most chemical fertilizers set without ever telling you outright. They feed the plant directly, bypassing the soil entirely, which means the soil underneath gets nothing out of the exchange. Season after season of that same approach leaves the ground beneath your garden bed emptier than when you started, deader, not richer, no matter how green the leaves looked in the moment. A depleted bed like that needs even more fertilizer the following year just to produce what it managed to grow on its own the year before. It's a cycle quietly built to keep you buying year after year with no endpoint in sight. A tonic like this one runs in the exact opposite direction. Every single application doesn't just feed this season's peppers sitting in front of you right now. It builds soil biology that carries forward into next season, and the one after that, compounding a little more each time. A few consistent years of this approach, and most gardens need noticeably less outside help with every passing season, not more, simply because the ground itself has finally become capable of doing far more of the work entirely on its own. This is exactly the kind of knowledge that used to pass from one generation of growers to the next, around a kitchen table, not something printed on the back of a bag at the garden center. Nobody wrote it down in a manual because nobody needed to. It got handed down in conversation, from a grandmother showing a grandchild how to mix something in an old mason jar, from a neighbor leaning over a fence to share what worked for them that season. It survived generation after generation for one simple reason. It worked, long before anyone needed a marketing budget or a glossy label to convince a single soul it was worth trying. So here's the whole method, boiled down to one sentence you can carry with you into every growing season from here forward. Feed the soil, stand back, and let it do exactly what it was built to do. That's the entire philosophy underneath everything we covered today. Not more products, not more chemicals, just giving the ground back its ability to function the way it was always meant to. 10 days from now, go out and check for the signs yourself. Look for leaves shifting from that pale, tired green to a deep, saturated color that almost looks like it's glowing against the sun. Run your fingers along the stem and feel for thickness, where there used to be nothing but a thin, fragile stalk that could barely hold itself upright. Watch for new growth pushing out in spots that looked completely stalled just a week earlier. Fresh leaves unfurling, new branches forming, buds appearing where there weren't any before. Some of you, especially those growing in warmer zones we talked about earlier, will see these changes even sooner than the 10-day mark. Don't be surprised if day 6 or 7 brings the first hints of that transformation. And for those in cooler regions, trust the process through the full window. The soil is working even when the surface hasn't caught up yet, and the results, once they arrive, tend to be just as dramatic. Before you go, drop a comment and tell us 2 things. What county you're growing in, and what kind of soil you're working with, sandy, clay, or loam. It helps every other gardener in this community see how this tonic performs across different conditions, and it helps us know exactly what to cover next. Because at the end of the day, the garden that keeps feeding a family year after year isn't the one with the fanciest fertilizer schedule. It's the one whose soil still remembers how to live. Take care of that, and it'll take care of you for a lot longer than 10 days.